Most people today don't realize something strange about modern nutrition. We've built an entire food industry around speed, convenience, and processed efficiency. Yet in doing so, we've quietly moved away from one of the most powerful forms of nourishment humans ever relied on. Not supplements, not powders, not expensive health trends, but something far simpler. Stews. Thick, slow-cooked, ingredient-dense meals that ancient households across civilizations depended on for strength, recovery, and survival itself. Here's what makes this interesting. In nearly every Old World culture, whether in agricultural villages, mountain settlements, desert communities, or coastal societies, there was always one shared idea. Food wasn't just for energy, it was for repair. And among all traditional foods, stews held a unique place because they weren't just meals. They were extraction systems. A way to pull minerals, nutrients, and restorative compounds out of simple ingredients and make them bioavailable through slow cooking. But here's where things get even more fascinating. Modern research into digestion, gut health, and nutrient absorption is now circling back toward what these traditional foods already did naturally. And by the time we reach stews like the slow bone-infused broth of early agricultural societies, the barley-based recovery stews of desert civilizations, and the herbal vegetable blends used in mountain regions for endurance and healing, you'll start to see a pattern that modern food culture completely overlooked. Because this isn't just about recipes. It's about a forgotten system of nourishment that shaped human resilience for thousands of years. And what you're about to discover is not only how these stews worked, but why they may still matter more today than ever before. Let's begin. The bone extract. Stew of ancient agricultural settlements. Most people today think of bones as waste after cooking meat, but in early farming communities, bones were considered one of the most valuable nutritional resources available. They were never discarded, they were transformed. Slowly simmered for hours, sometimes days, creating a dense, mineral-rich broth that became the foundation of daily meals. Historically, across early European, Middle Eastern, and Asian agricultural societies, bone-based stews were used during winter months when fresh produce was scarce. What makes this remarkable is what happens during long simmering. Collagen from connective tissues breaks down into gelatin. Minerals such as calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus leach into the liquid. Amino acids like glycine and proline become more available for absorption. Modern nutritional science has studied these compounds for their potential roles in supporting joint health, gut lining integrity, and protein digestion efficiency. But ancient cooks didn't need biochemical terms. They observed something simpler. People recovered faster, felt stronger, and sustained themselves longer during harsh seasons. Today, bone-infused stews are still one of the most practical ways to obtain the slow-release nutrients without supplementation. Just bones, water, time, and patience. A simple system of extraction that modern diets rarely replicate, and yet it was a foundation of survival. A quiet kind of strength in a pot. The barley and root stew of desert civilizations, in dry climates where food storage was limited, desert communities developed stews centered around barley, onions, and hardy root vegetables. This wasn't luxury food, it was endurance fuel. Barley in particular was valued for its ability to sustain energy release over long periods due to its fiber structure and slow digesting carbohydrates. When combined with roots like carrots, turnips, or wild tubers, the result was a thick, grounding stew that could sustain laborers through intense physical work in harsh environments. From a modern perspective, a barley's soluble fiber content is associated with slower glucose absorption and improved satiety response, helping stabilize energy over time. But historically, its value was practical. Fewer energy crashes during long days under heat and labor. What's interesting is how simple the preparation was. Ingredients were thrown into a single pot, simmered slowly over fire, and eaten communally. No optimization, no nutrient tracking, just consistent, reliable fuel. And in survival conditions, reliability matters more than complexity. This stew wasn't about taste alone. It was about continuity of energy. A quiet engine for human endurance. Now, the garlic and onion healing stew of early European kitchens. Across early European rural households, garlic and onion weren't just flavoring ingredients. They were central to restorative cooking. Stews built around them were commonly prepared during seasonal illness periods or after physical exhaustion from field work. The reason is not mystical, it's biochemical. Garlic contains sulfur compounds like allicin, which research suggests may support immune function and microbial balance. Onions contain quercetin, a flavonoid studied for its antioxidant properties. When slow cooked into stews, these compounds integrate into a warm, easily digestible liquid form. But what's more important is how they were used. These stews were often prepared when the body was under strain, fatigue, cold exposure, or recovery from hard labor. Modern interpretations would call this functional nutrition. Ancient households simply called it dinner. A simple pot that supported recovery when the body needed it most. No labels, just observation over generations. The lentil and legume stew of ancient Mediterranean diets. Lentils were one of the earliest cultivated protein sources in human history. In Mediterranean and Middle Eastern civilizations, lentil stews formed the backbone of daily sustenance. They were especially important in communities where meat was scarce or reserved for special occasions. What makes lentils interesting is their dense nutrient profile: plant-based protein, iron, folate, and complex carbohydrates. Modern nutrition science associates these nutrients with energy metabolism, red blood cell support, and digestive stability. But historically, the importance of lentil stews came from something more direct. They kept people functioning. Workers, travelers, and families relied on them for consistent nourishment, without depletion. Preparation was simple: lentils, olive oil, onions, herbs, and slow simmering until thick. No refinement, no processing, just transformation through heat. And in that simplicity lies their power. A humble stew that quietly sustained civilizations. The fish and herb stew of coastal civilizations. Coastal communities built their diets around the ocean's most accessible resource: fish. But rather than grilling or frying, many traditional cultures favored stewing fish with herbs, roots, and seawater or broth bases. The result was a mineral-rich, easily digestible meal. Fish provides omega-3 fatty acids, which modern studies associate with cardiovascular and cognitive support. Combined with herbs like dill, parsley, or sea greens, these stews became nutrient-dense recovery meals. Historically, fishermen would consume these stews after long hours at sea, helping restore energy and reduce physical depletion. What stands out is digestibility. Stewing breaks down proteins into softer structures, making nutrients easier to absorb without taxing the digestive system. In modern terms, it's a low-stress, high-efficiency nutrient delivery method. But to coastal communities, it was simply practical food for survival at sea. Nothing wasted, everything used. The mushroom and forest stew of woodland societies. In forested regions, mushrooms were a critical food source during transitional seasons. Combined with wild herbs and forage greens, they formed deeply nourishing stews used by rural communities across Asia and Europe. Mushrooms contain unique compounds such as beta-glucans, which research suggests may support immune system modulation and gut microbiome balance. But historically, their value was observational. They provided strength during scarcity periods when other crops were unavailable. These stews were often slow-cooked over wood fires, blending earthy flavors with high nutrient density. What's important here is ecological awareness. People didn't just eat mushrooms, they understood when and where to gather them. Food was seasonal intelligence, and stews were the method that turned that intelligence into survival. The millet and grain recovery stew of ancient Asia millet, one of the oldest cultivated grains, was widely used across Asian agricultural societies. It was drought-resistant, easy to store, and highly adaptable in cooking. When prepared as a stew with vegetables and light spices, it became a restorative meal used during recovery periods or heavy labor cycles. Millet contains magnesium, phosphorus, and plant-based protein, nutrients associated with metabolic and muscular support in modern studies. But historically, its importance came from resilience. It could grow where other crops failed, and it could sustain populations through difficult seasons. This stew represents something deeper: food as stability in unstable environments. The tomato and herb healing stew of early agricultural trade routes. As trade routes expanded, tomatoes and herbs began entering traditional cooking systems. In certain regions, slow-cooked tomato stews became common for digestive comfort and general nourishment. Tomatoes contain lycopene, an antioxidant studied for cellular protection and cardiovascular support. When combined with herbs and slow simmering, the result was a warming, easily digestible stew used in everyday meals. Historically, these stews were not special occasion food. They were daily maintenance meals, a way to keep the body stable through routine nourishment, simple but effective. The cabbage and leafy green stew of cold climate societies. In colder regions, cabbage became a survival vegetable due to its storage durability and nutrient retention. When slow cooked into stews, it provided warmth, hydration, and digestive support during long winters. Cabbage contains compounds studied for their antioxidant and gut-supporting properties. But historically, its value was more direct. It was one of the few fresh foods available during freezing months. These stews often included whatever preserved ingredients were available, roots, grains, or dried meats. A system of survival cooking built around necessity, not preference. The chickpea and spice stew of ancient trade cities' chickpeas were widely used across ancient trade cities due to their high protein content and storage stability. When cooked with spices like cumin and coriander, they became deeply nourishing stews used by merchants and travelers. Modern nutrition associates chickpeas with satiety, blood sugar stability, and digestive fiber benefits. Historically, they were valued for endurance during long journeys, a compact source of sustained energy. The rice and broth stew of East Asian recovery cuisine. In traditional East Asian households, rice-based stews or porridge-like broths were commonly used during recovery periods. Rice provides easily digestible carbohydrates, making it ideal for low-energy states. Combined with broths, vegetables, or light proteins, it created a gentle, restorative meal. The principle was simple: reduce digestive strain while maintaining nourishment. A concept modern nutrition now refers to as gut-friendly eating. The wild herb detox stew of mountain communities. Mountain communities often relied on wild herbs with natural bitterness. When simmered into stews, these herbs were used in seasonal cleansing meals. Modern studies suggest some bitter plant compounds may support digestion and liver enzyme activity. Historically, this was simply seasonal rhythm, lighter foods during transition periods, a reset for the body through nature's available plants. The pumpkin and squash stew of harvest seasons, pumpkins and squashes were central to harvest-based cooking traditions. Their natural sweetness and fiber content made them ideal for slow-cooked stews. They provided energy density and storage stability through winter. Modern nutrition associates them with beta-carotene and digestive fiber benefits. But historically, they were survival foods stored for cold months. The bean and vegetable stew of rural farming life beans were one of the most important protein sources in agricultural societies. When combined with vegetables, they created dense, filling stews for labor-heavy lifestyles. Their fiber and protein composition supported sustained energy release. They were everyday fuel for physical work, simple, effective, reliable. The mixed leftover stew of traditional households. Perhaps the most overlooked stew of all was the everything goes in household stew. Leftover grains, vegetables, meats, and herbs were combined into a single pot, and nothing wasted. This practice wasn't about creativity, it was about efficiency and resource awareness. Modern nutrition now studies food diversity and microbial variety in diets, but traditional households practiced it naturally through necessity. A living example of resource intelligence. Across all these stews, a pattern becomes impossible to ignore. They were not designed around trends, diets, or marketing systems. They were designed around survival, recovery, and long-term human function. And what's striking is how many of their principles align with what modern science is only now beginning to fully understand. Nutrient extraction through slow cooking, digestive ease, fiber balance, mineral availability, and whole food synergy. Ancient people weren't primitive in their understanding of food. They were observant. They learned through seasons, labor, scarcity, and recovery what actually sustained the human body over time. And stews became one of the most intelligent food systems ever created, not because they were complex, but because they were consistent, adaptable, and deeply practical. So the real question isn't whether these foods still matter. It's how much of this knowledge we've quietly replaced without realizing what we lost. If you found even one of these traditional stews interesting, share which one stood out the most. And more importantly, consider this. What other everyday foods today might once have carried deeper meaning, now forgotten under modern convenience? Because sometimes the most powerful knowledge isn't new at all. It's just waiting to be remembered. If you want more explorations into forgotten food wisdom, ancient nutrition systems, and traditional living knowledge, make sure to subscribe. There's a lot more still hidden in plain sight.